The first time anyone heard the words "you paid for me, now do it," they weren't spoken in anger. They were whispered with a quiet, trembling courage, carried on the dry wind of the frontier like a secret too heavy to keep. Out here, under a sky so wide it made men feel small, every choice had a cost. And sometimes, the price was a life that could never go back to what it was before. The ranch sat alone at the edge of the plains, a stretch of weather-beaten land where the grass fought hard to grow and the fences leaned like tired old men. Caleb Rowan had built it with his own hands after the war took everything else from him. He was known as a man of few words, the kind whose silence spoke louder than promises. His face was lined from sun and regret, his eyes sharp but distant, as if they were always looking back at something he couldn't fix. Folks in nearby towns said he was cold, unfeeling, married only to the land. They didn't know how heavy loneliness could be. When it followed you into every sunrise and every sleepless night, Caleb had learned early that the world didn't offer mercy for free. His father died poor, his mother buried before her time, and the war left him with scars that never fully healed. When he returned, there was no welcome waiting for him, only empty land and a chance to start again. He took it because he had nothing else. Over the years, the ranch grew strong, and so did his reputation. He paid his debts. He kept his word, and he never let himself hope for more than survival. On a dust-choked afternoon, a wagon creaked up the long road to his ranch. Inside it sat a man named Everett Hale, a gambler whose luck had finally run out, and beside him was a young woman wrapped in a plain shawl, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Her name was Anna. She had been sold to settle Everett's debts, traded like a piece of furniture, her future reduced to numbers scratched on a ledger. The law looked the other way out here. Men like Everett knew how to use that. Caleb hadn't planned on buying anything that day. He'd only gone into town for supplies, to trade cattle and pick up seed, but fate has a way of stepping in when you least expect it. He saw the transaction happening outside the saloon, heard the laughter, saw the way Anna's hands shook as Everett boasted about his deal. Something twisted in Caleb's chest, something old and painful. He remembered being powerless, remembered the way the world could decide your worth without asking. He paid Everett more money than the man deserved and took the papers without a word. To everyone watching, it looked like a simple exchange. Another man claiming ownership, another woman losing her freedom under a different name. Anna didn't thank him. She didn't cry. She just followed him to the ranch, her face closed. Her heart guarded by fear and anger she didn't bother to hide. The first nights were quiet and heavy. Caleb gave her a room in the house, told her she could eat what she wanted, work if she chose, rest if she didn't. He said little else. Anna watched him carefully, waiting for the moment the truth would reveal itself. She had learned not to trust kindness, especially from men who could take everything from her with a word. Days passed, then weeks. Anna worked alongside him, mending fences, tending animals, learning the rhythms of the land. Caleb never touched her, never raised his voice, never reminded her of the papers locked away in his desk. It confused her more than cruelty ever had. She had expected demands, threats, something she could fight against. Instead, she was given space, and space forced her to feel things she had buried deep. One evening, after a long day under a relentless sun, Anna finally broke the silence. The words came out sharp and raw, fueled by frustration and fear she could no longer contain. She told him she knew why he bought her. She told him he couldn't pretend this was charity. And then she said it, the sentence that had been burning in her chest since the day they met. "You paid for me. Now do it." The air between them went still. Caleb felt the weight of those words like a punch. He saw the challenge in her eyes, the desperation beneath it. She wanted him to prove he was like every other man, because that would make the world make sense again. He turned away, his jaw tight, memories crashing over him. He had paid, yes, but he hadn't bought her soul. He hadn't bought the right to break what little she had left. He told her the truth, haltingly, awkwardly, like a man who had never learned how to speak his heart. He said he paid because he couldn't watch another person be destroyed for someone else's profit. He said she owed him nothing, not obedience, not gratitude, not her body. He said if she wanted to leave, he would help her. If she wanted to stay, it would be as a free woman, not a possession. Anna didn't know what to do with that. Freedom sounded like a lie when you'd never truly had it. She accused him of playing a longer game, of waiting until she trusted him enough to break her worse than before. Caleb accepted her anger without defense. He knew trust couldn't be bought or forced. It had to be earned, slowly, painfully, if at all. Winter came early that year, harsh and unforgiving. A storm swept across the plains, trapping them on the ranch for days. Supplies ran low. The wind howled like something alive, and the cold seeped into bones and hearts alike. They worked together to survive, relying on each other in ways neither had planned. When Anna fell ill, Caleb stayed by her side through the night, changing cloths, whispering encouragement she barely heard. When Caleb collapsed from exhaustion, Anna took over the work without being asked. Her hands blistered and bleeding but steady. Something shifted between them in those quiet, desperate moments. Not romance, not yet, but a fragile understanding. They were both survivors, shaped by loss, wary of hope. They began to talk, really talk, about where they came from and what they had lost. Anna spoke of her childhood, of dreams she once had that were taken piece by piece. Caleb spoke of the war, of friends buried far from home, of a life he never thought he'd have. Spring returned, and with it, new challenges. Everett Hale reappeared, drawn by rumors and regret. He claimed Anna still belonged to him, that the deal had been unfair, that he wanted more money or his property back. The threat hung heavy in the air, backed by men who didn't care about right or wrong. Anna was terrified, old fears roaring back to life. She prepared herself for flight, for surrender, for whatever it took to survive. Caleb stood his ground. For the first time in years, he chose to fight not just for land or pride, but for another human being. He faced Everett, exposed his lies, paid off the remaining debt to ensure there could be no claim left. It cost him dearly, almost everything he had saved, but he didn't hesitate. He told Anna she was free, legally and truly, no chains left to bind her to anyone. When Everett left, defeated and furious, the ranch stood quiet again. Anna expected relief, but what she felt instead was fear of a different kind. She was free now, truly free, and freedom meant choice. It meant deciding who she was and where she belonged. She realized, with a startling clarity, that somewhere along the way, she had started to care for the man she once challenged with bitterness. She saw his loneliness, his decency, his quiet strength. Caleb, for his part, struggled with feelings he had long denied himself. He believed he didn't deserve happiness, that the best he could offer was safety and respect. Love felt like a luxury meant for better men. He kept his distance, afraid that wanting more would somehow taint everything he had tried to do right. It was Anna who finally bridged the gap, not with demands or anger, but with honesty. She told him she stayed because she wanted to, not because she had to. She told him he had given her back her life when no one else would, and she told him that somewhere in the quiet work and shared struggles, her heart had begun to heal. Their love didn't arrive in a blaze of passion or dramatic gestures. It grew slowly, like the land itself, rooted in trust and respect. When they married, there was no grand ceremony, just a promise spoken under an endless sky, witnessed by the wind and the earth that had shaped them both. To some, it seemed strange, even scandalous. The rancher who bought a woman and made her his wife, but those who truly knew them understood the deeper truth. Years passed, and the ranch flourished. So did they. Anna became a pillar of the community, helping others who had nowhere else to turn. Caleb learned to smile again, to laugh, to believe that redemption was possible even for men who thought they were beyond it. Together, they proved that the past didn't have to define the future. The words that once echoed with bitterness took on a new meaning. You paid for me. Now do it. Not as a demand, but as a reminder of how far they had come. He had paid a price. Yes, but what he gained was worth more than land or money. He gained a partner, a purpose, a second chance. And that's the story that still drifts through the Wild West archives. A tale of courage, compassion, and the quiet power of doing the right thing when no one is watching. It reminds us that redemption often begins with a single choice, and that kindness, even in the harshest places, can change lives forever. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that hope can grow even in the dust, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are waiting, and each one carries a lesson worth hearing, because sometimes, the greatest journeys begin with a single act of humanity and end with a life transformed.